everybody, welcome back to Cosmic Life Astrology. Today we are talking about the Mars retrograde cycle. Finally, I wanted to get this done earlier, but unfortunately I got sick for a third time in the past 2 months for my birthday. So I'm finally well enough to speak about this. I've spent a lot of time looking at the chart, and this is going to be an interesting retrograde cycle because there's so many things that are intertwined in the Mars retrograde cycle, and there's a lot of shifts that are happening during the cycle, and it's kind of blending into other retrogrades that are going to be happening after the new year. So I want to dive into it. I'm going to try to first summarize what the energy, that you could expect from a Mars retrograde cycle, and then get into more of these specifics regarding certain dates and degrees where we'll see things get a little hyped up or activated in some way. So first, I want to start out by saying Mars retrograde is not always a bad thing. Sometimes, when planets retrograde, people get nervous, like, oh boy, like what's going to happen? The timing of this retrograde is actually perfect because it's in time for the winter season for us in the northern hemisphere. And that's when a lot of people like to kind of retreat and stay close to home. And it's funny that Mars retrograde begins in Leo and then goes back into Cancer, which is very much a homebody energy. And with Mars retrograde happening over the course of 11 weeks, we're going to see a time where we're going to be taking our energy back and conserving our energy and trying not to overdo ourselves. Mars in Leo can be very action-oriented and passion-driven, and, has a lot of drive and courage to get things done or to go after things that it's trying to pursue. With the Mars retrograde starting in Leo, it's as if Mars is saying, okay, I've pushed as hard as I can push. I've, done as much as I can do. Now I need to relax. Or, I've can only put in so much until someone can meet me halfway kind of vibe, right? During this time, I'm going to give some examples. So let's go back. I'm a Gemini rising, it's Mercury retrograde, these things happen. Let's go back for a minute to October 6th, or October 5th. That's when we saw Mars at 17 degrees of Cancer. So between then and now, what have you been putting your energy and focus into? What have you been taking action towards? What have you been, passionate about? And what has been your driving force for the past 2 months? Because during the Mars retrograde cycle, you're going to be revisiting that, or you're going to be in a period of acclimating towards that. So if you took a lot of actions and initiative towards something, maybe, a new job, or maybe you moved homes, or maybe started a relationship, or even started a new project of some sort. During the past 2 months that you've been, putting your energy and effort into whatever that is for you, now could be a time where you're acclimating during the Mars retrograde. Now, during the next 11 weeks, you're going to be acclimating to those new things and finding your comfort zone, right? Because Mars is going to retreat all of its energy and all of its gusto, and is going to take a step back to now watch what happens now that it enacted certain things, right? And this, if you're involved in something or you started something where you see during the retrograde period that you don't quite like the way it's turning out, this could be a time to address what it is about that particular thing, that particular new venture of sorts you don't like. And now's the time to observe it and find a way to tweak it to be the ideal image of what you wanted it to be. I don't particularly mean image, but you get what I'm saying. But this is a time where you can observe and reflect, and you may need to rethink some plans or go about things in a different way. This may be a time where you have to strategize a different modality or a different way of going about things. And so this is not something to be feared. The retrograde cycles are, overall an opportunity for reflection, an opportunity, for observation, an opportunity to revisit things. Now, the interesting thing about the Mars retrograde is that it's starting in the middle of a Mercury retrograde. And so I think that many of us are going to be revisiting things from the past in some way. Or there could be people from the past that are coming back in to maybe collaborate on something or to revisit something that may have happened that needs to be addressed between the two of you in order to find a common ground or to maybe, set your differences aside and come to a agreement between maybe two possible opposing forces. And I say that because during election week, we had Mars making an opposition to Pluto. And at the time, Pluto was at the last degree of Capricorn, right? So there may have been some tension or some challenges during that period where you may have had some kind of disagreement on something, or there may have been something brought up or brought to your awareness that needed to be addressed, and maybe two people weren't on the same page about it, right? Or maybe the way one person was going about it wasn't really jiving with the other person. That could be brought back into the conversation now because we have Mars going retrograde, Mercury is retrograde. So, when you have two planets retrograding at the same time and they're personal planets, there's definitely going to be a revisiting of something that once was, or something that happened in probably the not so far past because they're personal planets and they move faster. But this is definitely part of the, wild ride that could be during the Mars retrograde is that we are in the middle of Mercury retrograde. And so there can be a lot of conversations with people from the past. And, I generally am going to say, it could be a lot of conversations with masculine energies because Mars is a masculine energy, or relating to some kind of, masculine person in your life, or, whether it's a son, a father, your significant other, whatever it may be, there could be issues regarding them that needs to be addressed, right? So we have that. And, as we get into the Mars retrograde, we're going to see some some really interesting conversations being had between the planets. So the most intense part of the Mars retrograde cycle is unfortunately going to be during Christmas time for those of you that celebrate Christmas. So between December 24th through January 8th, we're going to see Mars starting to approach an opposition to Pluto again. At this point, Mars will be in Leo opposing Pluto in Aquarius, so it'll be a little different flavor from the first opposition that took place during the beginning of November when we had, election week. During that week is when we saw the first opposition. Now we're going to see the opposition take place with Pluto in a different sign. And so there will be a little bit of a difference between how this energy plays out, because now you have fire and air opposition versus water and earth. So, that fire air opposition could be a little problematic. There could be some heated conversations when you're talking about, Mars opposing Pluto, that can bring tension. And in fire and air signs, that could be, tense conversations. However, on the flip side of that, if it's not tension, right? When you have an opposition, a lot of times, essentially, it means that there's a relational aspect happening, right? There could be a challenge, in some relationship in your life during this time where it's a challenge that takes time to work through. And I say that because the oppositional energy, it does play out for a decent amount of time because of Mars being in retrograde now during the opposition. We have, we have about 2 weeks of this opposition playing out. So there could be some relational tension of some sort where it takes a while to work through. And, if you are able to take a more slow, steady approach during times of tension, you can, find your way on some level ground during that time. And then once we get through that opposition, we're going to see, and I had to write all this down because there's so many dates that I wanted to remember, but we have on January 5th, Mars at 0 degrees of Leo opposing Neptune, trining Neptune at 27 degrees of Pisces. Essentially, that's when it begins. The exact date is on January 12th. And so we're going to see Mars now making a beneficial aspect to Neptune. And with Mars backing into Cancer, we're talking about a water trine between Mars and Neptune. And so this is going to be a relief from maybe that tension that Mars and Pluto had up until the 8th, where when Mars starts approaching that trine to Neptune around, this begins right before that Mars opposition ends. So it's as if a softness is brought about, and there's a way to maybe bring some emotions into the mix where you can be vulnerable and come to an understanding with the relational opposition, right? And, that can bring about a more productive resolve between whatever comes up during that time. And so, that is like a light at the end of the tunnel with the Mars opposed Pluto is then Mars starts connecting with Neptune. And it's like, okay, Neptune can be about forgiveness, right? as well as, you know, creativity. Neptune is very spiritual. It's very intuitive. And, you know, Mars in a watery sign like Cancer, you know, it can be passive aggressive if it's, you know, rubbed the wrong way. And Mars is not really comfortable in Cancer. It'd much rather be on the other side of the fence in Capricorn. But, you know, Mars is, you know, it's like it's trying to be in Cancer's territory of that sensitive, very safety and, you know, comfort oriented energy of Cancer. And, you know, Neptune is very fluid and very much about, you know, what's possible. And so this water trine can really have people enable their intuition, their ability to have compassion for each other, their ability to create some kind of resolve, especially with Neptune, you know, coming close to that anaretic degree in Pisces. You know, it's closing out its tour of duty in its home sign. And so, you know, I think that helps that whole, you know, resolve, right? Resolving of problems, or, you know, coming to a conclusion, you know, coming to an understanding where everybody can walk away happy. That's very much a nice way to, you know, get through that oppositional energy. And then after that, we have Mars at 23 degrees of Cancer making a sextile to Uranus and Taurus. And that is going to be, you know, it's as if, okay, we have the opposition, then we have the water trine, okay, where people are able to, you know, have compassion, talk it out, be vulnerable, be forgiving, have empathy. And then Mars sextile Uranus is like, okay, now that we agreed to disagree or agreed to resolve things in whatever way, now we can make a change. Now we can go about whatever it is we need to, you know, go towards and, you know, enact, right? Now that we talked it over and figured it out and so forth, right? And, you know, I think that's especially the focus during the sextile, because Uranus and Taurus is all about what you value, right? And Mars being in Cancer, you're valuing, you know, your safety, your comfort, your home life, your family life. And so, you know, there is going to be this ability to honor what makes you feel comfortable, honor your values, and really, you know, have others understand that your values are important to you. And, you know, essentially be true to what it is that you want and what it is you find, you know, with Taurus, luxurious, and, you know, it's ruled by a Venus. So it's about money and love and all things beautiful. By the way, when we talk about that Venus energy, Mars retrograde is not a good time to do some kind of dramatic beauty procedure to your body at all. During the Mars sextile Uranus and Taurus, you may be considering it, but don't do anything that isn't medically necessary during the Mars retrograde. Hold it off until after the retrograde is over, because chances are, you know, if it's something cosmetic, you may not like the way it turns out. So just a side note to my blabber. Then as we trek along through January, we get to January 29th and we have Mars trining Saturn and squaring Chiron. I like this. Mars trining Saturn, again, a water trine. Mars is in Cancer, Saturn's in Pisces, and we have Chiron in Aries. So right off the bat, when I saw this, I said, okay, we're working through a healing process, right? Saturn doing the work, Chiron healing, Mars taking action towards doing that healing work, right? Even though it's retrograde, it may be slow action. It may be something related to the past that you need to work through. You know, you may need to resolve an issue with someone from the past, right? Healing some, you know, maybe a broken relationship or, you know, whatever it may be for you. This is an opportunity to work through that. And I think, you know, that is very important for the Mars retrograde cycle as well, because that Mars trine Saturn and square to Chiron is going to be active for the rest of the cycle. So you have about a month of Mars trining Saturn and squaring Chiron in Aries. You know, Mars squaring Chiron in Aries, yeah, there could be some hurt feelings. There could be some wounds triggered, especially if you find that people are tapping into that passive aggressive tendency that Mars can have in Cancer. Or, I need to back up for a minute because I want to say, you know, Cancer and Leo energy is similar in a couple of ways. Cancer, like I mentioned before, is very much about home, family life, you know, likes to be comfortable in its surroundings, is very sensitive and intuitive, and, you know, can be an energy where, you know, they don't share their heart with just anybody. It takes a while for Cancer to open up. Now with Leo, they don't have that same problem where, you know, they don't, they'll share a little more openly than a Cancer does because they're very much, you know, they're a fire sign. They're passion oriented. They're not afraid to say what's on their mind. However, the similarity is that Leos are very loyal to the group that they belong to. You know, you think of lions out there in the safari, they all have their pack that they belong to, and they stick with them and they protect them. And so that's where Cancer and Leo can be similar, is they are protective over the people that they love, okay? So during this time, when Mars makes that square to Chiron, you may come into some situations where you feel the need to protect someone that you love or care about from being hurt, right, with Chiron. However, with Mars trying to Saturn at the same time, Saturn is going to kind of help tame the situation, right? Saturn wants you to take that stable, you know, steady, disciplined approach to things. And so if you come into situations where you feel that you need to protect your loved ones for some reason, or maybe you need to protect your family, or, you know, help a family member through some kind of difficult situation in their life, Saturn will be there to support that need for taking a very slow, steady approach to the situation, and to enact compassion while it's in Pisces, right? Now, this is a lot, so this is not going to be one of my usual 15-20 minute videos. Then we move on to February 6th. We have, we move on to February 19th, where we have another grand water trine. This time it's with Mars, Saturn, and the Moon. And I'm pointing that out because, you know, when we have a grand trine, there's usually something going on, you know, in whatever element that it's happening in. it's something that we need to pay attention to. So at the time that this happens, the moon will be in Scorpio. We have Saturn in Pisces. We have Mars in Cancer. And so, that could be a very emotional situation. There could be something, very deep. Now, I can say, this just came to me. With Scorpio being ruled by Pluto, things get dug up from underneath, right? And, things need to be revealed in order to, fix and rebuild, or, address things that, needed to be brought to your awareness. And then we have Pisces, Saturn in Pisces, and Pisces can be about medicine. And Mars in Cancer, can be about taking care of a family member. This could be a situation where, there's an opportunity to find out about something medically that needs to be addressed or needs to be fixed. That can happen for some people. I'm not saying that's going to happen for all people, but it's something that came to me because of that kind of connection between those signs. I could see that being a potential for people. But on the same token, water grand trine could be a very emotional day for people. And this happens, towards the end of the Mars retrograde. This could, be a beneficial opportunity, whichever way it goes, because a grand trine is very supportive. It is an opportunity to make something happen, okay? So if something challenging does come up, there is going to be support for you to get through it. Now, some highlights that I want to talk about beyond everything else that I've already said. I want to note the trend in the things that are happening during this Mars retrograde cycle. So, I just left off on February 19th. Mars retrograde ends on February 23rd, okay? So everything I just discussed are some of the highlight aspects that are happening during the Mars retrograde cycle, things to look out for, things to be mindful of, the more significant energies that can, you'll see some things build up during that time, right? But I want to note some of the interesting facts that I thought, we got to talk about this, because a lot of people, you'll see, if you start looking at your chart and you see, transits where they're hitting natal planets at certain degrees, you're able to track things and kind of understand how it's going to impact you, and what to expect. So what I'm going to do now is just highlight some of the trends and interesting little tidbits of activity that's happening during the Mars retrograde cycle. So we have Mars retrograde as of today, December 6th. It starts at 6 degrees of Leo, and it is trining the North Node in Aries, okay, during the Mercury retrograde cycle. And the day after Mars goes retrograde, we have Neptune going direct, okay? So we're in Mercury retrograde. Neptune is going to go direct. So clarity is going to come slowly because Neptune doesn't move fast, right? And meanwhile, Mars is taking a step back, right? Interesting little tidbits. Then we get to January 27th. Venus, so let me pause for a second. Venus and Mercury are going to retrograde together in 2025. in the same territory at the same time. And I'm bringing this up because it's going to be the energy of both is going to be during the Mars retrograde cycle. So on January 27th, we see Venus begin her pre-retrograde shadow period at 24 degrees of Pisces. And when that happens, Mercury conjuncts Pluto. Interesting, right? Then on February 12th, we have Mars at 17 degrees of Cancer, stationing to go direct. And it doesn't go direct until February 23rd, right? And we will see Mars at 17 degrees of Cancer until March 8th. So between February 12th and March 8th, Mars will be at 17 degrees of Cancer. So we have a month of Mars staying put in the same degree. Take note of that. If you have anything at 17 degrees of Cancer or within a few degrees of it, you're going to see a very heavy concentration on that. February 23rd, we have Mars going direct, making a trine to Pisces, to Mercury and Pisces at 17 degrees. So we begin the Mars retrograde with a trine to the North Node. We end the Mars retrograde with a trine to Mercury. And at the same time that Mars goes direct, it's also going to oppose the Moon in Capricorn. And again, this is at 17 degrees. So the Moon will be at 17 degrees of Capricorn, Mars 17 degrees of Cancer. And Neptune will be conjuncting the North Node in Pisces at 27 degrees. I mean, you want to talk about an intense day for Mars to go direct. You have a trine to Mercury, an opposition to the Moon, and Neptune conjuncting the North Node. And that's just the highlights. You know, I didn't, want to include all the other little things. This is the highlights. Then 5 days later, on February 28th, you have Mercury starting its pre-retrograde shadow at 26 degrees Pisces. And at the same time, we have the Moon, Mercury, North Node, and Neptune all conjuncting each other. Hello. Hello, 2025. How you doing? This is like, we're going to have a Pisces pileup, okay? Like, I don't, the videos for next year are just going to be out of this world because we have so much that's going to build up in Pisces, and then we're going to see planets change signs, for the first time in, forever. Neptune has had a long stint in Pisces and is going to move out. Saturn as well, and the nodes are changing in January to Pisces and Virgo. We have so much going on in 2025, but I digress. Back to this. Then on March 2nd, we have Venus begin its retrograde at 10 degrees of Aries, and it's going to go back to 24 degrees of Pisces. So stay with me here. March 15th, we have Mercury retrograde at 9 degrees of Aries, back to 26 degrees of Pisces. And oh, by the way, during the the Venus and Mercury retrograde cycle, the North Node will stay at 27 degrees of Pisces the entire time. And they will both be retrograding essentially for March and April. Okay? And oh, by the way, March 14th, we have a lunar eclipse in Virgo at 23 degrees. And March 29th, we have a solar eclipse in Aries at 8 degrees. And then Mars leaves shadow on May 3rd. So we have Mars retrograding for 11 weeks. It ends the retrograde on February 23rd. And it doesn't leave the territory that it retrograded in until May. And during that time, we have all this happening while it's basically slowly but surely making its way, through that post-retrograde shadow period, okay? There's significant energy that is going to take place, not just during the retrograde cycle, but also after, more significantly after, okay? We're going to see it start to build up after the new year when the nodes change signs. I'm a Gemini rising, Mercury retrograde, I'm sorry. The nodes change signs in January. So we're going from Aries and Libra to Pisces and Virgo. And then we're going to see, when Venus gets into Pisces, we're going to see Venus in Pisces, and Saturn and Neptune are still there for a bit. And we're going to see Mercury enter Pisces, and, and Mars is still going through its cycle. There's a lot of things that are going to come together. So pay attention to what you have in Pisces, okay? Don't just pay attention to where Mars is retrograding between 17 degrees of Cancer and 6 degrees of Leo. Also pay attention to where Pisces lands in your chart, because there's going to be a pileup of energy in Pisces. And so that's going to be an area of focus, especially, after the new year. I know I'm getting ahead of myself, but it's good to look at these things and say, how is this going to affect me? Is this touching any of my natal planets? Is it conjuncting anything? Is it, aspecting anything in my chart, where I need to, be mindful of what's coming up, and pay attention to things that are, brewing and, starting to happen, and come to your awareness. So there's a lot. In preparing for this video, I kid you not, I had pages of notes, and I was like, I need to dial it back. And this is my dialed back version, but I wanted to give you guys a lot of context because this is a long retrograde cycle. And, so there is a lot of important things that are going to happen during the 11 weeks that Mars will be retrograding, and it is changing signs. So, there's an energy shift during the retrograde cycle as well. We will continue to talk about this as we go through the rest of December and January. So this won't be the last time that I'm going to talk about Mars retrograde. I will get into some of these smaller, shorter-lived connections that Mars makes as we go through the weekly horoscopes and, when we have the full moons and new moons. So this is not the only time we'll talk about this. We will get into the weeds as we go through. I hope that you guys, can keep up with everything that I threw at you. I know it was a lot, but I always like to give as much information as possible. So this way you guys can understand what to expect and what to prepare for, and, how to keep track of it with your chart. That's why I give the degrees and, try to give you all the details that you need so you can understand. So I digress. I'm going to stop talking now. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're not already subscribed to my channel, please hit that subscribe button, help my channel grow. I would really appreciate it. And share your comments. I'd love to hear, what's been happening for you over the past 2 months since Mars has been in the pre-retrograde shadow. And how do you think this is going to play out? And how's Mercury retrograde been for you? Oh my God, I'm a Gemini rising, so it's been real fun for me. Yeah, I hope you guys all had a great Thanksgiving and are enjoying the holiday season so far. And stay tuned for more videos. Take care, everyone. Bye.